I've already made a probably too long video on some of the issues with Fallout 4's factions. However, that video focused mostly on the problems with moral complexity and basic story problems. It didn't really go over the actual deeper issues with the factions in terms of world building, and since one faction in particular has more world building problems than the others, I'm going to start by making a video focusing on them. The Commonwealth Minutemen. Protect the people at a minute's notice. A noble goal, to be sure, but like I said, this time around it isn't about their morality. They are, for the most part, the clear-cut good guys. What's left of them anyways. No, I want to go over why their very existence causes world-building problems. Or why it is more proof Bethesda didn't think a lot of this came through. What I wouldn't give to see that cutting room floor. Let's get the easily fixed one out of the way first. Preston's persistent pestering for quests. I cannot figure out if this is caused by a bug or not. Everywhere I look, there's either no information on it or conflicting information. It would not surprise me if it was a bug, though. Although, the constant requests for help kind of makes sense in-universe. The Commonwealth is not a safe place. So what's the actual problem with it? Well, it makes Preston look like either an unfeeling psychopath or a complete moron. This is made so much worse in survival when your character actually needs sleep. The people calling for help might need help, but nobody's going to help them if that help is dying of exhaustion. The fix for this is simple. Have a cooldown for the quest he can give, or limit the number he can give at one time. I know both of these help greatly because there are mods that actually do it, and it does help a lot. Now, onto something that is heavily connected to the previous issue. Preston weirdly lacks empathy for the player character. You tell him your infant son has been kidnapped, and his response is, "Oh no, that's terrible. Now would you mind helping me with this Herculean effort to rebuild civilization starting with a statewide civilian militia?" This is completely at odds with his behavior and dialogue from most of the game. He's not supposed to be an unfeeling jerk. It really does break immersion, especially on a second playthrough when you know what kind of person he's supposed to be. How to fix this one is very simple. Push back the ability to actually rebuild the Minutemen until slightly later in the game. Preferably once the sole survivor has actually made something of a name for themselves, and it's become clear to them that he or she is going to need more help than a single detective to find what they're looking for. More on the whole reputation building in the next section. Complete lack of diplomacy. This is kind of a big one, because the entire premise behind the Minutemen is rebuilding a civilian militia in order to make the Commonwealth safer for everyone. There is a big problem here. That being that nobody really trusts the Minutemen anymore. Their reputation is completely shot. And for very good reason. So it makes no sense when you do a settlement one favor and they immediately join you. You should have to gain each settlement's trust over time, or at least the trust of the first handful of inhabited settlements. That would give time in-world for word that the Minutemen have returned and are trustworthy again to spread. Actually, come to think of it, having it be incredibly difficult at first and then making it progressively easier to gain each settlement's trust would make much more sense, as long as that particular curve was slight so recruiting doesn't wind up way too easy. The fix for this is still fairly simple, at least conceptually, but might be slightly more difficult to implement. On to tiny settlements joining up. Yeah, this one is truly insane. When you help out a settlement, no matter how insignificantly small, they usually say, "Yeah, we'll join up." Even if there are only 2 people living at that settlement. The reason this breaks the world building and the common sense of the people in the world is, well, how are they actually going to help? When they first declare loyalty, they have nothing. A few meager crops and maybe a couple of pipe weapons. They also can't, or at least shouldn't be able to, drop everything they're doing and rush to another settlement's aid, even a nearby one. At least not without leaving their own settlement defenseless to raiders and the like. And yet, once you recruit that settlement, even if you leave it as bare bones as you found it, you can still use the flare gun nearby it and have a couple of Minutemen come to your aid. This makes no sense. The fix for this one is simple but odd. Just have the smallest settlements be reserved for later, after you have built up the Minutemen into a reasonable force. and have them come to you for your protection while they grow their settlements. This would be when their workbench is open to you to actually start the growth instead of people magically appearing after being warp summoned by a radio antenna. I don't mind the idea of an invitation beacon, but people should be way more cautious about that kind of thing in the Wasteland, especially before the Minutemen have managed to build up any real trust or goodwill. And now we reach the one I have the biggest problem with. The logistics of the Minutemen, or rather, lack of logistics. After you build your first artillery, you don't really have to do any more supply quests for the Minutemen. So where are they getting all of their equipment and essentials? Yeah, some Minutemen probably brought their own weapons when they were recruited, probably most of them actually, considering the whole post-apocalyptic wasteland thing, but a lot of them carry laser muskets. Also, the actual equipment pool they draw from is fairly small, so they are likely being supplied with similar weapons and equipment, but we never see how. Ronnie Shaw is the Minutemen's quartermaster, making her almost solely responsible for making sure each soldier has what they need to do their job. And yet, she never asks the Minutemen's actual general to lead any important supply missions or negotiate with anyone for a good deal on medical supplies and the like. Yeah, the general wouldn't be doing those kinds of things in a normal military. I don't think so, at least. But this isn't a standard military. This is a civilian militia slowly building up its forces in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. I didn't have a problem with the whole food thing, though, simply because basically every settlement you recruit can and usually does become self-sufficient in terms of food. Having each settlement with excess foodstuffs chip into the Minutemen makes perfect sense, especially since they, for the most part, join the Minutemen willingly. But where are they getting things like weapons, ammo, medical supplies, boots? Other than Ronnie Shaw, there is no real answer there. And she is just one person. A very tough and capable person, but one person. You could theoretically argue that even those supplies are coming from the settlements that have joined up. However, most settlers will just grab weapons you stored in the settlement's workbench. They're not shown to produce or acquire weapons or armor in other ways, besides potentially taking a weapon from the defeated attackers during settlement attacks. With the exception of their default weapons, which are usually pipe weapons, it's always either you equipping them or them grabbing seemingly completely random weapons from the settlement's workbench. They're not usually making anything other than food and maybe some caps, so it really can't be them that's supplying the ammo, armor, weapons, and meds, at least not in the needed quantities or without some extreme headcanoning. The fix for this? Well, you should at least have the option to go out of your way to improve the Minutemen's standard loadout. Honestly, Ronnie Shaw should have a small series of dangerous or intricate supply quests for you that normal Minutemen just couldn't handle. Preferably leading up to setting up small factories and supply depots for standardized weapons, armor, and ammunition. There's not even an option to provide funding to the Minutemen. And I'm not saying you should have to give Ronnie caps in-game every month or so, no. Maybe something like being able to allot some of the profits from your settlement shops to the Minutemen for general use, which would in turn improve the Minutemen equipment over time. Kind of like what the mod We Are the Minutemen does, only slightly more fleshed out. It's a very good mod. There's also the idea of adding a few random Minutemen patrols with supply units who will give you the occasional remark about looking for extra gear for the cause. Maybe even have said units mark known caches of good supplies in dangerous areas on your map for you to clear out of enemies so they can send lightly armed scavenger teams to collect the supplies afterwards. Can't carry a bunch of supplies if you're already loaded down with weapons, after all. Just seeing the Minutemen actually collect supplies would go a long way to fixing this issue. Okay, so even though each of the problems I've gone over on its own is an issue, why do I have the biggest problem with logistics in particular? Well, it's honestly because of Ronnie Shaw. I need to explain that one. After you complete the quest Old Guns, she pretty much immediately becomes the Minutemen's quartermaster and, more importantly, a merchant. She is, in fact, one of the best weapons merchants in the game. And that's the problem. Before she has time to actually gain any supplies whatsoever, she sells a legendary Gauss rifle and mini nukes, along with a massive inventory of other weapons and ammo. She does lead you to an armory during her quest, however there is absolutely no way all of what she stocks was in that one room. And on the off chance it was, why is she selling it to the likely already well-equipped general? Instead of making sure the actual patrols that really do need the weapons and armor receive them, they are usually rather poorly equipped. This makes the Minutemen's quartermaster look like a complete idiot at best, and she's very much not supposed to be. The simplest fix for this last issue is to have her inventory expand over time, starting with bare-bones basics and then grow slowly into her usual stock, rather than starting as one of the best supplied merchants in the entire Commonwealth. Maybe have her stock depend on if you've done any of those supply missions I've suggested, or the likely lazier option would be to tie her stock to the number of settlements that are currently allied to the Minutemen and have her mention that occasionally. I've already gone over why I don't see that working in the base game, but it's better than nothing. So in summation, the Minutemen could be greatly helped by reducing Preston's pestering while making him more empathetic, including some general diplomacy for settlement recruitment and alliances, and most importantly, letting us see or at least hear where the Minutemen supplies are actually coming from. If you folks have any ideas for making the Minutemen better, please put them in the comments. I'm actually really curious if I missed anything important or didn't notice something in-game regarding them. Well, that's all for today, so I'll just say, thank you for listening to my inane ramblings.